We're going to look at getting started in Linux with QMapShack, which is a desktop application. And this is a bicycle computer, Garmin Edge 520. My interest is mountain biking. We're just going to look at getting started here. Installing it. You install it and then it needs maps. So then, there's a process of downloading some maps and installing them. You install them on the bike computer, you install them on the desktop software. Then QMapShack also needs elevation data. And it needs a database for its routing tool. So there's a lot of setup that's specific to your geographic location. And there's 2 very good references online for how to do this. And you follow along with a written material and screenshots. I like this format, but a screencast is also useful. So I'm making a screencast, but this is what I looked at to make the screencast. So we start out installing it, at least in this operating system, this version of Linux, this distribution of Linux. It's pretty easy. QMapShack is in the repos here. And I like that it's in the repos because I don't want to go out and install all these individual things. This package manager, I think, is a big help here. So at this point, it's installed and it runs. I'm using a low resolution on this monitor to make a screencast. I really don't like how the software looks at low resolution. This is the map, and it is quite small. Go to full screen mode in this VM. Doesn't help a lot. This map is still small. And there's all these other sort of tool windows. I mean, it's a crowded display. This is the kind of thing where I want 2 big monitors on my computer and to be using them both to struggle with this activity. But for a screencast, it's just going to be this single monitor at low resolution. So your first task is to go get some maps. This doesn't come with maps, but it sort of makes sense because you only care about maps for your local area. Or you might be taking a trip to someplace else, then you go get maps for that place you're going to go to. You don't want maps for the entire Earth. You don't want to fill up your computer with all that. So there's a procedure for doing this. This is a good service that asks for donations. I guess it's supported by donations. These maps are really good. I mean, they're very detailed, and they have... I mean, I'm interested in mountain biking, and they have the mountain bike trails, like the major ones. I want the bicycle map. I want New York State. Manual tile selection, reset selection. That looks good. I think I have to zoom in a little here. I usually don't even drive to trails. I just come right out of my apartment and just ride right to them. So the area that I need is small. This is the panning tool. So sometimes I'm in Horsehead, sometimes I'm in Binghamton. I will take this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. That's plenty for the places I go. Sort of around this area. 52 megabyte download. To actually get the data, you put your email address in here where you want to receive it. Hit this, build my map. Eventually, in my case, quite fast, you get an email, and it has links to click on to download the maps. That email looks like this. I'm using Linux. I don't want this Windows. I don't want this Mac. You have two different files here. This first one is for the Garmin bike computer. This other one you can use for QMapShack. Like they say, especially useful for Linux users, QLandCart. QMapShack is a newer version or a newer fork or whatever it is of QLandCart. So you would get this email and follow this link and download these. And you'd end up with this. I'm gonna make a directory in documents called maps. I'm gonna put those in there in their own separate folders to be organized, unzip them there, and then work on them. I think I did that right. So this is the file that has to go on the Garmin. All these other files are for QMapShack. So let's look at the Garmin and identify how that would be set up. In Linux, the Garmin shows up just like a USB stick. So inside this Garmin folder, there's lots of stuff. But to add the maps, you got to replace this file with the one you got from that service. And you're going to overwrite this with what we just set up. You know, maps, Garmin, this guy. But you have to rename this to the name that the Garmin wants it to be, which is this. I'm gonna install the maps in QMapShack. I'm gonna set up the map paths. Maps, tiles. This is where I put it. Now you see those files that were unzipped, and you have to activate them. I get confused. You do one, and then this sort of refreshes, and I'm not sure it's refreshed in the same order that it was before. It feels confusing. I guess they do get a little arrow or something to say that they're activated, or something's going on. Yeah, like this last one. You activated the maps, and then you're over here in the map, and you say, "Gee, I don't see my map. Where's my map?" And if you show the grid, now you're seeing latitude and longitude values. So if you know the latitude and longitude value of your map, and you look at this and you say, "I'm nowhere near my map. I have to pan and zoom." The way I figured this out, I'm sure there's a lot of ways to figure this out, but I had known about a software called Marble. And this is pretty much where my maps are, around the Finger Lakes of New York State. And for whatever reason, with this low resolution monitor, I mean, usually if I'm in a bigger monitor, I'm going to see the values down here somewhere. I'm not real familiar with Marble, but I mean, all I know how to do right now, if I right click, copy the coordinates. If I open up a text editor, I can paste them. Basically, here's your values. 42 degrees north, 76 degrees west. So, and then I just have to pan and zoom. So to zoom out, I think it's Control and then the minus sign. And this is pretty gradual. So we're looking for 42 north. What was it, like 76 west or something? Basically, for the west, that means in QMapShack, that means negative numbers here. So I'm going to drag along going west. And now I'm finding my maps. And then I do Control plus and zoom in. Where we left off last time, we had installed map data. And we had found where it is using Marble. But now, I just want to see what it looks like and zoom in. And then explore some of the settings under a tile here. Some of these settings. Just to play with them, see what they do. So if we zoom in, it's like Control plus. And the way it's set up, I think, you're going to see the map no matter how far you zoom in or out, is what it seems like to me. And these maps are very detailed. You're coming into some small objects here. Which tile is which? If you hover over the tile, you get a tooltip that says, this is the tile that ends in 964. So I go over here and I find 964. There's a few different settings, and I'm not sure. I don't know right now exactly how useful they are, but we can play with them a little bit. Yes, now it's working after a restart. Well, that's what this setting does. Opacity or transparency. So I could say, well, for this tile, I want this, I think this is how this works. I want this to be the maximum scale at which I'm going to see that tile. So I click that, and I guess this color means that for these scales, I'm going to see this tile, but for these scales, I'm not, or something like that. So if I zoom out, the tile should disappear. So that works. But I don't really want that feature. I'll get rid of it that way. And then you go the other way. You zoom in and say, if I was going to zoom in any farther than this, I don't want to see this tile. And I'm not really sure why I would want to do that. But I think if I do that, I think this graphic says this is the zoom level we're at. If I zoom in farther, you don't see the map. Here, this green means you would see the map. If I zoom in farther, the map seems to mostly go away. Or this tile seems to mostly go away. But it still has some stuff that's displayed. Now it's back, gone back. But it doesn't get rid of everything, which seems buggy, or something's off. So if I want to get rid of that setting, I believe I have to zoom all the way in, click this button, and yeah, I think it's working. I mean, I find it disconcerting how you zoom in and out here, and features of the map just kind of immediately appear or disappear. They don't transition, or they don't sort of fade in and out. They just go. They come and go very, very sharply. And then I think these are just visibility controls for an area, a line, and a point. The point, as far as I can tell, is like I was expecting both Endicott and Binghamton to disappear, but only one disappeared. I get rid of the points. if I get rid of the lines, if I get rid of the areas. Let's take a look at getting the elevation data for QMapShack. So this monitor is pretty small, so it's a little tricky to use this website. We don't want this. We want this 1/3 arc-second resolution. Now we've got to select off this map what we want. I'm still looking for my Binghamton, New York, and Elmira, Horseheads, Corning area. And the more you select, the bigger the download is. Based on that selection, you want to find products, and it goes and looks for them. The show footprints is very handy. This is showing what you're going to get in the download. So it looks like it really didn't matter how carefully I made this box. I mean, you're going to get these tiles if you add them all to the cart. Now, if I view this cart, I see the total download size and I think how many tiles it is, I believe. So this isn't too bad. Now, the way I do this download is I'm going to hit this button. This is going to create a text file. And that text file is a list of URLs to download these tiles. Just a list of URLs. And I have installed kget, which is a download tool, and it can operate on that file that's a list of URLs and do the downloads. Now, I've actually done this before to try it out and practice. I should be able to clear this list out and generate it again. Import links. There should have been 8 of them. 1, 2. Looks right. So if I tell it to do the download, it'll work on it, and I have kind of a slow internet connection. So I just want to see that it starts and is doing it. But for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to wait through this. I think I can probably select all of these and quit it. So let's assume that already happened. I don't think I put them there, but I've got them. At least I have them here under elevation data. This is just the text file with the URLs. This is the elevation data. So the idea was to go to the folder where I was putting maps and then make another folder in there for elevation data. And I'm actually going to pretend this is the downloads folder, and I'm going to copy this stuff into my folder with the maps and elevation data and so forth for QMapShack. Yeah, these files are not particularly small. It's taking a noticeable time to even copy and paste them from one place to another. They will gradually come up. At least this file manager has like a graphical display of the progress, which I like. And it's done. But these are zipped, and they have to be unzipped for QMapShack to work with them. So I'm gonna put each one of these in its own folder. So basically these appear to be named according to what I think are latitude and longitude. So I can just and then to put each file in its folder, probably doesn't really matter that this is done correctly. I just think it's somewhat less confusing this way. But I have a feeling even if something's mixed up here, it's probably not a problem. I think there's probably something that would be more efficient than this, but I think I got them all, but let's take a look. Yep, looks okay. Now I want to do a preliminary step. The idea here is to make sure that this command is finding the files it needs to operate on, and I guess it is. Then you want to, yeah. Now within back quotes, to find looks good. And that didn't take too long. Yep. Now this shows up. Activate. Now I have a little arrow. Or maybe Okay, there it is. So this is too opaque. So I don't see my map underneath it anymore. So I think I'm going to back off on the opacity. And this VM doesn't have a lot of processing power, so this is a little slow. I mean, this still seems to be a bit opaque. This is getting to be sort of readable. Yeah, I think this VM is a little challenged to produce this image. And I think this is the situation where you want to decide, what part of the zoom range do you want to see this stuff and to use this control. I mean, when you're zoomed way out, I don't think you need to see this elevation representation. And maybe when you're zoomed way, way in, you don't need to see it. So this control allows you to make those choices. This slope thing applies colors to the slope of the terrain according to a chosen key. And you can select different keys, but for this area, this is not a mountainous area. And secondary mountain or level country, I think, are fairly appropriate here. So what does this control do? I think this is the opacity of hill shading. It looks like it's going the other way. Yeah, this elevation data tile set should go out pretty far as you zoom out farther. I don't know whether when I'm zooming far out, the processor on this virtual machine is just going so slow that we're not seeing the hill shading or what. But let's play with the setting that says only show me the stuff when I'm zoomed in enough. So let's say that this zoom level was where you wanted to have a cutoff between displaying hill shading and not. So I click this, and what should happen is if I zoom out, it should go away. If I zoom back in, it should come back. And then if I go farther in and say, I don't know, this certainly is zoomed in so far that maybe the hill shading isn't as useful, can hit that. And then if you zoom in more, it won't show it. Or I think you can zoom all the way in, and I think if I hit this, it'll turn everything here green and get rid of that lower bound. And if I zoom out again, well, as you're zooming out, this is where hill shading stops. And then if you want to get rid of that again, just zoom all the way out. I mean, this little indicator is showing the zoom level, basically. That's as far out as you can zoom. If I hit that, in principle, I think this says that even zoomed way out, we should see the hill shading. I don't see it. That doesn't mean that this virtual machine isn't struggling to generate it. It looks like it's trying to do it here. Maybe there's another setting that's doing something. And just to, I guess, look at some of the effect of this setting. Like if you use a color key for a more mountainous region, I think you end up not getting much, because now a lot of the colors are used for steeper grades than you can find around this area. So you're not going to get much. I think these are probably steeper too, I think. Yep. This area, I think, is more level country. So the colors are used for smaller slopes. But I think the secondary mountain setting also works okay. Now we're going to a little bit larger slopes, but they're still relatively small, and it works for this area. Let's take a look at the last topic in adding data to QMapShack to get it into a usable state. This is the step where you're getting the data for the routing feature. You just have to go to this website. What I'm going to do is the steps to get data for my local area, and my local area really requires two of the United States states, New York State and the state of Pennsylvania. So you go to North America. This is the file that will work. Pennsylvania. For New York, they look the same. Pennsylvania. Looks right. Then I want to take those files and put them in my maps directory, and then load them into QMapShack. I want to make a new folder for routing within maps. Move the data in there. Creating the routing database. Basically, you can select multiple .pbf files. So I'm doing New York and Pennsylvania, so that's what I'm going to do. Maps, routing. Select multiple files. I think this is the location where this routing database is going to be built. I'm going to have it be in the same directory. And I'm going to give it a prefix, New York and Pennsylvania. You run a tool, and the progress is shown in this window. In this small monitor, this window is way too small to display what's going on. The process is finally over, and now the hard drive of this machine has the data that enables the routing function. There's only one more step, or a few more steps. I mean, it's offline routing. I don't think an internet connection is necessary to use this routing function. And then this is sort of a panel for the routing tool. And profile, I believe, means how you're traveling. So you have different modes of transportation. I'm interested in bicycling, so I choose this. You got to select the database. You just built this database, but you have to select it here. It's asking for paths, so this is the path. Okay, once you give it that path, then it can find this New York and PA database that was just built. Now the system should be ready to create routes automatically. So at this point, after a bunch of labor, QMapShack is ready for use.